Hello, everybody.
Hi, ladies.
Hey.
Hello. Okay, so for those who are new to our channel, thank you for joining us for Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, a YouTube series from the Women of Color Health Equity Collective. And you have some of your exec team here today for this conversation. So my name is Janice Catalina. I'm co-ED of the Women of Color Health Equity Collective, and happy to be here. And I'll kick it over to Dana. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Dana Campbell, and I am the co-executive director of the Women of Color Health Equity Collective.
Thank you.
Vanessa?
In stereo. Vanessa Martinez, Director of Operations for the collective.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So thank you all for being here. I think what we'd like to do is start a little bit about what is the collective, right? And we call ourselves the collective for short, and our full name being the Women of Color Health Equity Collective. But we know that can be a mouthful, so we just refer to ourselves as the collective for short.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So who wants to start with a little bit of the backstory of how we came to be the collective?
I guess I can start.
Yeah.
You all just chime in when you're ready. So I don't remember the year because years now all meshed together. But approximately 5 or so years ago, the three of us and a few other people found ourselves leading an organization that had existed in Western Mass for quite some time, Mother Woman. And so many of you of our subscribers may have heard of Mother Woman. And we were all trying to figure out ways in which we can take the Mother Woman models, and bring them into communities of color, particularly in Springfield and Holyoke, where we live. And we're finding maybe a little pushback, or just having conversations with people who are saying, hey, you know what, this model may or may not really work in our communities. And so I think we struggled for a few years trying to find our footing, recognizing that racial equity meant a lot to all of us, in both our practice and our research. And then in 2020, which seems like, again, like it was yesterday, but it was almost 2 years ago, or it was 2 years ago. We had some, very unfortunate murders of Black and brown people in the U.S. And obviously, this isn't new. This has happened many, many, many times in the past. But I think along with COVID, which made everybody have to stay in the house, people became more aware, particularly around the world, of how this the brutal killings of Black and brown people by law enforcement is quite prevalent in the area. And so that really just made us say, you know what we believe in is racial equity and social justice, and we just need to take a huge jump into the proverbial lake. And that's what we did. We changed our name. We shifted our focus. Not to say that we are not still interested in maternal and perinatal health, but really thinking about all of the needs of women of color and how that it affects our families and our communities, and ultimately our society. So I'm going to pass it on to somebody else who is going to talk about how we jumped into cultural humility.
Yeah. I just want to recognize too that our official rebranding was in the summer of 2019. So we're coming up on our official 2 years since we rebranded.
Was it really?
And yeah, and I think
I don't know what year it is. Sorry.
It was like reinforced after that with everything that was just happening in the world and what we were seeing, and especially the losses with the murders of many Black and brown people. I think we took that as like a reinforcement of like, yes, this work that we're doing is needed, and we made the right decision in our rebranding.
Are you sure it was August 19th, 2019?
It was the summer. Yeah, we're coming up on wait, maybe it would be
it was August 2020.
I can't remember anything either. Jeez.
Hey,
yeah, 2 years would be 2022.
That is hilarious.
Have merged together as one. However,
I'm
I
telling
Yeah.
have to
you, we're
say,
exhausted, people.
I
We're
saw this
exhausted.
very interesting thing that has now become my mantra for 2022. Y'all seen Fight Club?
Yeah.
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 What's the first rule of Fight Club?
You
We
don't
don't
talk
talk
about
about
Fight
Fight
Club.
Club.
Correct. And so I saw this awesome thing that said the first rule of 2022 is you don't
You don't
talk
talk
about
about
2021.
2022
I thought that
or
was awesome.
Yeah.
2020 for
Awesome
that
little
matter.
Yeah. That's so bad. Yeah. Everybody's like, it's 2020 plus two. Like,
right.
it's really like
Right.
the last 2 years are a blur. Maybe I was just hopeful that it started before all of this.
I mean, we kind of
Yeah.
did start before. We were
Right.
struggling. Remember, we had talked
Hmm.
about what is our name going to be and how are we going to do
Right.
this and how are we,
But
and
it was COVID and the murders and all the racial justice work that was happening during
Hmm.
COVID that really pushed us. And
Hmm.
we made a decision, like in terms of like name and everything. We made that actually very quickly, even though we sat on it for a while. It's kind of interesting how that happened.
yeah,
So
Yeah. We wanted to be sure. And I think for all of us, Dana, like you mentioned, it was all of us that were on board with us and, recognizing the importance of equity for us individuals, right? And the work that we do, all of us being involved in our own personal experience too around perinatal health and it being that, you can't just focus on mental health, like everything else
right,
impacts mental health. We
right.
need to think of ourselves in that holistic being.
Yeah. Yeah. So Dana, earlier you mentioned sort of how we um, passing it on so that we can talk a little bit about how we delved into cultural humility. And I think when we made the decision to shift our focus, the goal really became about community capacity building. And one tool for racial justice work, for health equity work, for us to be talking about the social determinants of health is using cultural humility. And a few years ago, we had the opportunity through some funding and some collaboration with Bay State to bring trainers of cultural humility to Western Massachusetts. And all three of us were trained not just in cultural humility, but as trainers of cultural humility. And so that really started us on this sort of broader path, I would say, even before COVID and the brutal killings of Black and Brown folks in summer of 2020. Um, so I would say that's sort of what got us there. And then you and Janice, while I was dealing with the newborn and some health issues, you guys got the opportunity to go without me to California and work with Doctors Turvalon and Marie Garcia, which are the founders of Cultural Humility. So, Janice, why don't I turn it over to you to talk a little bit about that experience? Because I'm still, I love y'all, but I'm also jealous.
Yeah, I describe that as like my celebrity moment. Like I remember distinctly. So Dana and I had arrived, and this was like a last minute trip. Like Dana, I remember calling me and being like, "Hey, so I just stumbled upon this link on Eventbrite to do a train the trainer with Dr. Turvalon. Will you come?" And I was just like, hell yeah. Like, didn't even think about my kids and my family and like my job. I was just like, hell yeah, I'll come. Oh, it's in Oakland, California. Whatever, fine, let's do it. And then we were like, we're going to fly in the day before and fly out after the training. Ooh, that was a lot. And then there was supposed to be a snowstorm. So we were like, okay, we need to fly out earlier because there's no way that we are missing this training. So Dana had to work some magic with the airlines and get us to fly out earlier to get out there. But it was a wonderful experience. And Dr. Jan Marie Garcia wasn't even, I think, supposed to be there. Like she wasn't even part of the co-facilitation of it. It was mainly Dr. Turvalon and her apprentice, Leanna Lewis. But then I remember coming up the hallway, like just so excited and like going straight forward and then like almost running over Dr. Jan Marie Garcia. Like she had come around from the room to go use the restroom and I was just like full steam ahead and I was like stopped and paused and like stared at her for a moment in the hallway and was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, excuse me," and let her walk past me and then I'm like, "Oh my god, I think that was Dr. Jan Marie Garcia." Oh my. And like I have to say the whole name like Dr. Jan Marie Garcia. Someone just ran into her in the hall. And so it was just for me it was an amazing experience, totally worth the like no sleep whatsoever going out there and back and days of jet lag. It was just amazing for me. Hopefully we'll do it again, Vanessa.
I would like that. I want to meet them. I want my star moment.
Yes, it was awesome. And I think what it did for me was really got me, and it was my fault kind of that Janice didn't get any sleep because I just was so compelled to be like, hey, I'm gonna pull up this YouTube. Hey, I'm gonna just, because it just was there's just so much going on. And in my I all the ideas started flowing. I started flowing with ideas. Um, and I think that's what led us to where we are today, and how we really, saw this as an opportunity for Western Mass at minimum to really embrace a tool kind of together, which is really interesting, right? It's an interesting concept because, I mean, people can have all kinds of racial justice training or social justice training, and um, but this particular tool, I think, the more and more we spread it throughout the region, can allow us to talk the same language, right? And hold each other accountable at the individual level, but also at the organizational level. And that's when, change starts to really happen. And so I think, this was a good decision on our part to move in the. I mean, of course, patting ourselves on the back, but also really making this is like a bold move, right? It's different. It's not quite what other people are doing. I mean, people are passionate about their work and they want to get it
Yeah.
out there. But I think our vision also included that this is where we live, this is where we're from, and our people, right? Our BIPOC people, the groups that we belong to, are suffering in ways uh, that we could make some influence on. And so we just, took that dive in, and here we are making a YouTube.
Yeah.
Who would
Well,
have
and
thought?
the response has been amazing from just the community, the organizations that have reached out to us. I mean, the sheer number of trainings and support that we get asked to provide throughout the last few years. It's just been, it's a, both a blessing and a curse, I guess is a
Yeah.
phrase that they use, right? Or it's
Thank you,
like,
Monk.
yeah, that we're so supported and people are calling us and inviting us into these spaces. And then at the same time, it's like a lot too,
Right.
right? And our own kind of fatigue and racial
Especially
equity
as a
work.
grassroots volunteer only women of color organization. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, we all have, like full lives outside of the collective, and so it's been really interesting. Although Janice, you've gotten to spend a little bit to make a decision to spend a little bit more time on this work. I think Dana and I are also a little envious, although, who knows, maybe I'll follow suit in the years to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the goal is for us to be able to have more time dedicated to be able for this to grow the organization. I'm always in awe of how much we've grown just in the last couple of years.
I mean, when you think that really we made the decision to like expand, name change, expand, etc., in less than 2 years, and then you think about the number of trainings and consulting pieces and some of the research that we're doing and the advocacy work that's now growing and the direct care, when you think about all of that, it's a little amazing. It's amazing, and as you said, like a lot.
I'm
Yeah.
curious as to why you think that you all, I mean, I know you all are on board with all of this, and I think, sometimes we get asked the question, why does racial equity matter? Like, why does this matter? And I'd like to hear from y'all what you think. Vanessa, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Sure. Um, well, I mean, for me, as a light skinned Latina that gets mistaken for everything but Boricua sometimes, it matters to me because, I've spent a lot of time justifying sort of my place in the world as a light skinned Latina. And, and so I don't pretend to have experiences of people that are darker than me. Like I own that light skin privilege. Like I talk about that in my classes and in the work that I do. But racial equity is just it's something that I have been thinking about for a long time. I just came to this work in a different way because of how I look, right? And so this conversation of racial equity, um, I've always been sort of noticing the things. Like I've always asked the question, like, why? I
Mm-hmm.
was a why child. I drove my family insane with all my why questions. My
Mm-hmm.
mom still tells those stories to people. Um, and I just always like this was always something that I was meant to do. I was always meant to do this work. And so for me, understanding that we don't all start at the same place, but we want the goal to be that everyone ends up at the same place, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
understanding equity in that way is just such a big deal. Like you can't keep doing the same thing to get a different result. You can't keep talking about handing people the same stuff if their house isn't on fire, if one
Right.
house is on fire, you know. So that's for me just it's been uh many, many years of thinking about this and
Right.
really um talking about it differently than a lot of my peers. And for me, having people like you guys as my team and really having the same perspective about
Mm-hmm.
equity and how important centering racial equity is, it's just a big deal. I'm going to stop talking now. Janice, jump in. Beja, just jump in.
No, I was loving everything you said. Yeah, I think for me, so my experience, when I reflect back on growing up, like I was always in white dominant spaces, right? Like I was always one of maybe the darkest people in the space and navigating through that. And then I can recognize that I spent a lot of my life too, because I was in white dominant spaces, trying to figure out how to fit in, right? How to become accepted by those groups and what that meant for me, and how much of myself I was losing in that process as well. Um, and I think as I continued on in my own work and in my own education, really being aware of the differences in what I was learning and what was actually happening in real life. I mean, I did a lot of direct service work, especially within Springfield, and a lot of work
Mm-hmm.
with youth and families. And right, so you get like the theoretical, and then you're able to say like, but that's not what I'm seeing, right? That's
Right.
not what's actually happening to the families that I work with, to the people that I'm trying to support that are getting denied this way and that way based on people's bias and prejudice and all of that. And so that was a big motivator for me, right? Of recognizing that I had privilege within my position, with my knowledge that I had and my upbringing, to be able to support people in advocating. But I felt like it wasn't enough, that unless we really go towards system change, right? Unless we get other people to also recognize what they need to do and what they need to change, that me being, working directly wasn't going to make a big difference for folks. It was making a difference for an individual in a moment, but it wasn't going to be
Right.
lasting. And so I felt like when I joined the collective and the board and everyone, listening to you all share your passion and your work and your knowledge and experience, I was like, I found my people. Like this is it. And I love it. And I love that we can have very candid conversations and we can name stuff and call it out as it happens. And we're on that same level of understanding around the inequities and injustices that are happening. So
Agreed.
this is my space to be
Yeah,
able
this is
to
your space.
explore
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, Dana, it's all you, baby.
Yeah.
What about
You know,
you?
it's interesting, because I have similar background or upbringing as the two of you, which is ironic in a way because I do not identify as Latinx. I grew up in Amherst, Mass, predominantly a white space for the most part. Um, but I did have like a strong um, support system of Black friends, right? And then and I was very aware of things that were going on around me, but without naming it, right? Like I didn't really know why certain things were happening, and maybe because, much like most people, we're taught that racism happens at the individual level,
Right.
and if the people next to you aren't calling you the N word, then racism isn't happening. And so that's, but yet you still see things that you can't completely explain. And then I went to college to an HBCU, which I absolutely love that experience.
Lucky.
I right, and I also was in the South, so that's again another opportunity for me to learn in a different space than what I was raised in, and so I learned a lot. Right, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my people, where they came from. I saw lots of people who looked like me who were doing. I'm like, damn, that person's smart. Oh my gosh, that
Hmm.
person. Like, wow, I'm an idiot. Um, and no, no, seriously. Like seriously, I was like,
Seriously,
13 days
she's
of
not.
what? Like, okay, all
Yeah.
right, let me just zip it. Um and but then also being in a space in the South where my color, my light skin, actually was almost detrimental to my identity as a Black woman. So I mean, it's kind of funny to sort of think about this because, and particularly because I locked my hair during COVID. COVID happened, you do all kinds of different things. But anyway, um, but being light and having curly hair, people were like, are you really Black? Are you coming out? Like, which one of your parents is white? And I'm like, what is happening? Like, 'cause I'm all power to the people. I'm like, what's happening here? Not to say you can't be if one of your parents
Right.
is white, but it's just that it was just like the immediate, I had to justify my Blackness so
Mhm.
much. And so it was just really weird. It's a weird experience, but it allowed me to grow in a way, um, that I became like far more like I don't even have to, like, confidence. My confidence is up. I'm stronger. I know who I am. I know where I'm going. I know the direction I'd like my daughter to go in. I know you two both have children as well and are thinking about how is this work that we're doing impacting our children and the children of our communities. And so racial equity is huge, right? Because you want to make sure that you are leaving that kind of legacy,
Yeah.
that you can, that when my child, well, we know she's a little spitfire, but when she's older, I want her to say my mother left this,
Mhm.
right? Whether she carries it on or not, but I want her to know that. And so yeah, I work towards that. I think that's, it's kind of what it means to me. I mean, obviously, we want to make huge changes in society, and because we want our kids to live in a place where they're not experiencing the things that we experienced as kids or in our growing up. They'll experience some things. I mean, that's gonna happen, par for the course. I mean, like it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
but you know, I'm so protective of like these certain kinds of experiences. Like, I do not want you to have to go through that. That I can't. Yeah, can't have that. You know. So important work. Probably
Yeah.
way too much work, but important work.
Right. Well, it took thousands of years to get to where we are today. It's going to take lots of lots and lots of time to undo all of that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed this year, and I'm going to ask you all to respond on this, is that you know, Janice, you had made a comment earlier that people have been calling us to do a lot of work, and you know, it's exciting. It really is. It's exciting to engage in partnership with people to do this kind of work. But we've also been met with pushback,
Mm.
and those experiences, which I'm so glad to have the two of you and our colleagues to really talk it through, because it can be extremely harmful to us physically, emotionally, because you think that you're making strides, right? It's like, yes, we're in this organization and we're training and we're talking, we're consulting, we're coaching, we're doing all this work, and then someone makes a comment that is like, oh, thank you, you have set me back
Mm.
10 steps. And now I have to rethink where I'm going. And so I'm wondering if you all want to share some of those experiences with the audience, so they can really understand that this work is hard, and it also can be harmful.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like every time I prepare to do a training, I'm like, okay, there's a possibility that this is going to happen, right? I feel
Mhm.
like every time we enter a space, especially since we're doing training on cultural humility, right? And we lead with race. So, and being a brown person doing this type of a training, I'm like, there's going to be somebody in the crowd that's going to do, like, I'm always like, who's conspiring? Who's going to be in the crowd that's going to conspire against me? What's going to happen
Yeah.
in that moment? Yeah,
Right.
and there's been so many, and I feel like because we talk about microaggressions and we talk about
Mhm.
calling in and calling out, and I feel like there's so many people that
And
have a
trying to
hard
get them
time
to
hearing that.
practice it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's not just us talking to them. It's like getting them to practice. The fascinating thing for me is always like the resistance to just practicing, like
Mm-hmm.
to just doing the activity of like, trying to repair a relationship. You've made a mistake. Like, let's practice, and there's resistance. Like they don't even want to practice. Like I'm just like,
Mhm.
you've done it. Like heck. Like before I had some of this language, like I remember responding a way that I would not do now, right? And like if I had responded like and if the person who like told me, hey, you know what? That was offensive or you shouldn't have responded to that, like if I had responded to them the way that, sometimes we get, like I wouldn't be who I am today, right? Like you have to be open to people saying like to practice, like to
Yep.
practicing, to owning it, right? Like
Mhm.
I feel like one of the things um that I try to do when we do the trainings or when I do the trainings is like I spend a lot of time at the forefront. Like, okay, so this might be challenging. Okay, so we're in this together. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but man, that's exhausting. Like sometimes I don't want to do all of that
Yeah.
legwork of like,
Mhm.
hey, so we're in that, like you're gonna get whatever you give to it, like all of
Mm-hmm.
this like stuff that I'm just like, you should know that you're at a training. Like you signed up for it. Like you should just commit, right? Like you're here, commit to the work.
Yeah.
They're
There's
not.
so much that throws me off when people are like what they actually get from the training. Like I feel like a running thing that often happens after we go through the microaggression thing is that people's takeaway is like, oh, so I can't comment to Black people about how nice their hair is. And
Right.
we're like, oh my gosh. Like I think you completely missed what we were talking about, right? And then we have to go back and do like a whole nother lesson around like what do we actually say? What do we mean? How far is too far? What are you trying to gain from this? Like,
Right.
and having that conversation. So it's like so many things where like people make a comment or try to reflect, and you're like, oh, all right, you just shifted us way back. Now we got to start over again around this and move forward in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, on a, for those of you who have not been through our training, the microaggressions, or at least this conversation that the two of you all are talking about, these kind of little things, yeah, those can be, sort of circumvented or resolved, and sometimes we have some real blatant, comments, or even some blatant resistance, right? We The three of us and some of our colleagues have had the pleasure of training to black screens. Um, and so, those of you who don't know, if you are on Zoom and you don't turn on your camera, there is a black screen with your name on it if you put your name in there. And it happens to be one of the most painful things on
Mm,
the planet, to
yeah.
train a group of 30 people who have all turned off their screen. You are literally
Mhm.
talking, you can see yourself and you are talking to yourself. And it's painful because you don't know, what the intentions are of the people on the opposite side, right? um are they mad because they're there? Are they not even there? um
Mm-hmm.
and we it's kind of, I mean, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but in some ways it is a waste of time, because it means that we've spent all this time training and teaching and learning from people who don't want to engage. Maybe they don't want to engage in
Yeah.
the training, but it also makes me think they don't want to engage in real relationships with people who don't look like them.
Yeah. And coming in with that open mind and trying to learn and hear other perspectives. And I'd rather, and it offers us as facilitators some reassurance that people are actually picking up on content, right?
Right.
When, especially when we're doing it over Zoom, I'd rather have to go back and re-explain something so that everybody has an
Yeah.
understanding of it than to just be talking to black boxes the whole time and
Right.
not see folks.
Well, I mean, I could understand it if like we were doing sort of a webinar where we were just talking the whole
Right.
time. But like that's the challenge, right? Like in a cultural humility training, for those of you that have not gone through our training, I mean, it is interactive. Like the whole point is to have people practice the skills and the content that we're talking about. So, you practice self-reflection. Like that's the goal. You
Mhm.
do it in group, in small group breakout rooms. You do it like you're practicing these skills. And so you're doing self-reflection, you're mitigating power imbalances by like practicing how do you repair relationships, or and so you're doing this work of like building relationships and community and institutional accountability. So there are all of these practical activities that get done, and discussions that happen in the large group. And so when you're talking to black screens, like at least talk to me in chat. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, at least give me some chat, people. Like that's what
Right.
I end up saying. I'm like, you can put stuff in the chat. Like I
Yeah.
will
Right.
maneuver. Like even if I'm by myself, I will have that chat up, be talking with, and like maneuvering whatever. Like just give me something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting people's different ways of like having their own way of controlling things, right? Like I have control over whether I turn on my screen or when I don't. Control whether I'm going to participate or not, right? Or I'm going to get the last word, right? Like
Mhm.
somebody saying that racism doesn't exist right before our training ends, right? Like,
Right before you hit leave. And for
oh,
everyone, you're like, what?
yeah. Oh, okay. Power move there. All right. Trying to show you guys some
That's
control.
right.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like the different ways that people are trying to either stay with their power, right, and exercise their power in a
Mhm.
certain way, right,
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
electronically or virtually.
Yeah. But I don't want everybody to think that we've only had some negative things. We've had some super
Oh, yeah.
wonderful experiences and have learned a lot, and have watched people grow in a 8 hour training, a six
Mm-hmm.
hour training, and and I actually really kind of enjoy some of the Zoom, because we have been able to do like a series of trainings. So like we could do
Right.
2 hours this week, 2 hours this week, and give them homework and come back and have those discussions. You get to know people. And so there are some positives in this. And I really like when at the end, people might stay back and ask a few questions, or they'll say, can I get in touch with you? And that's wonderful. I mean, it's great to have the work, so don't get me wrong, but if people just want to reach out just for clarification, or they want to engage a little bit more, that's also rewarding on lots of levels. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, we stay back, when we can, because sometimes it's the other thing about
Back to
Zoom is
back.
it's back to back to back. But our, we have emails, and so that feels good. It feels like we're making, progress, that we are, um, that we're doing what we were put on this earth to do.
Yeah, I feel like that continues to feed us to move forward, right? Like if we only had the negative, then we would just be exhausted and drained and stopping at that point. And it's all the wonderful things that come out of this, the growth that you get to see, right? Being in a training with only 4 or 5 people, and like just so much conversation taking up so much that you don't even get to cover everything, right? Like those are the amazing moments that happen, or just keep us going.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Agreed.
Vanessa, you're about to say something? I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
I just was going to agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So those of you who are watching us and you're thinking, hey, I'd like to talk to those ladies, like, please reach out, call us. Well, no, don't call us, because we probably won't pick up the phone, but you could email.
Yeah, email, social media,
Social
right?
media, everything. Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
website. I mean, you can go to the website and drop in, comments in the inquiry section. And just, I want to say this just as a sort of a caveat. One of the things that we say when we show up to our trainings is that there are always more questions than answers. That is true. I mean, we're talking about constructs that, like Janice said, have been built over, hundreds, if not thousands of years. And we do not profess to know everything, right? Well, as professors, I profess to know everything, but that's a whole other story.
Oh, please.
I know.
You tell students that you're constantly learning
They're
from
like,
them.
no, okay. So we don't know everything, but we like to engage because that helps us to learn. And it helps, as Jenny said, it helps to feed us and what we do. So, you reaching out to us and is great. And if we don't respond right away, just keep doing it. Because we do have other jobs. We do have children. we do gobs of training. We are so accommodating to the people who've reached out to us. Oh, you need training tomorrow at 9?
Sure.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Who's going to do what? And we just try to work that out because, we recognize that this is important. It's important to you. It's important to us.
Yeah.
But give us the same grace that we give you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Be flexible with us.
So.
Yeah. Any last comments, Vanessa?
No, I'm good. It's always a pleasure. I mean, other than it's always a pleasure, ladies. I mean, we only see each other a few times a week. It's
right. Wait, in square. Well, it's really funny because these particular boxes aren't square. So I keep seeing myself in this rectangle in a weird way. I'm like,
you're not used to it. Yeah.
No, I need my square, my Zoom square.
Oh, that's really funny. Yeah, if you notice, I keep doing this.
Yeah, because I don't think you can see me. That's really funny. Janice, you have some last minute comments?
I think my only comment would be that part of this work that we've been doing is also recognizing that we need to be sharing other perspectives and exploring other perspectives. And that's what brought us to creating this series. And so wanting to get people together to have conversations like we have, right? And because there are so many times where we have had so many just deep conversations around identity and being. And there's so many times where we're like, man, we should have recorded that. So,
oh my God, yes.
That's what we're trying to do now. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do now, right? Oh man, I mean, coming to one of our board meetings, you're like, man, we just got deep in the hole now about
So true.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is what we hope to continue, is to bring people from different backgrounds and experiences to come together and continue having these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am definitely looking forward to these sessions that I said I would bring some people together and talk about. And I know you two both also have ideas, and so I'm looking forward to that too. And if you are not subscribed, okay, so my daughter watches YouTube. If you have not subscribed, please click the button below, the red button that says subscribe. I think that's what they say. Okay. And if you like, please check. I like this. This is, a 50-year-old talking social media talk. Doesn't have, I have no clue. So please subscribe, because the more subscribers we have, something happens, and I don't know what it is, but maybe things go viral.
I think
Something
so.
happens.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Share us all over the
Share us.
place.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Share, tweet,
Twitter,
Instagram it.
Instagram, Facebook,
Instagram,
share
blah
us
blah
all
blah.
over. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that all three of us are like social media newbies still,
Well,
even
no,
though it's
Janice
been
is
around
good.
forever.
Janice does way better than I do. I barely know what these things are
Well,
called.
then
So
why
I
were
had to
you the one
learn.
telling them to subscribe?
well, because my daughter watches YouTube, and I hear the people at the end.
Yeah,
If you
right.
like this, press the subscribe button at the bottom. And there's some sort of
Hilarious.
notifications. I don't understand that.
You
But
know, my
Yeah.
favorite thing right now is
What?
that on Instagram, I can post it to whatever I'm posting, I can post it to Instagram, and I can click that it automatically goes to my Facebook and my Twitter. So it's only one thing. I only
Yeah.
post one
Yeah.
time. It's
I just
magical.
I can do
I
it
just
vice
want
versa too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say this one thing, and then we can end this. You all watch Charlie Brown?
Like
My
currently or
Charlie Brown.
have in the past?
You've seen Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
Let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
Mhm.
And you know the adults say wah,
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 wah.
wah,
Yeah.
wah, wah.
That's what I hear when you all are saying. I put something in Instagram and it goes to Twitter, and I'm like, wah, 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 wah.
Yeah. Like whenever we do our fundraisers and we're like, everybody share. And Dana's like,
Yeah.
I
I can send out a text message. I'm good on that. I'm good at emails. The other stuff, I'm like, how do I do it? How do I do it?
Yeah.
all right. It's always changing too. So like
It is.
That's
It
true.
is.
That
I've been
is
told
absolutely
Facebook isn't
true.
a thing anymore. And I'm like, okay, now
Yeah.
I have no idea. We're not
No,
going back to
Yeah.
it's for
MySpace.
older
So
people.
Now, yeah. Now it's like, what? Oh my gosh. What's the new thing? What's the new thing? It's on my sibling
Snapchat?
got me into it.
Snapchat?
Is that still a thing?
Oh, TikTok.
That's it. That's
TikTok
it.
is
The
the
new
thing
thing
now.
is TikTok. And so, oh my
I don't
God.
really understand TikTok. But
Oh my God.
don't
So,
explain it to me, but I don't understand it.
We
whatever.
completely
But
derailed.
it's
We did. So if you
Anyway.
see us on TikTok, please subscribe. All right.
Well, actually, you know what's good is that if they are still watching, they are probably laughing hysterically. So that is a good reason to subscribe, because
is.
you know the three of us are hilarious. Okay.
Yeah, well, we try. We try. Well, I'm gonna close us out and say to everyone, if you are in this area, stay warm. It is cold outside. Stay
Yeah.
safe. Please wear your mask and get boosted if you can, please. And it's been real. We'll catch you later.
Thank you,
Hope
everyone.
to see you at a training
Yes,
or,
right.
you know, at
Somewhere.
community conversation maybe in the future. If you don't know what that is, you will soon. Lots of love.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank
ladies.
you. Bye.